Warning. Money's Crazy Mind contains language that may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised, but will be completely ignored.
I'm sick of it, doing right, doing wrong. Parents pissed off every time I write a song. Smoke, crack, worship Satan, what the fuck is that? It's something funny, made for you to laugh at.
You're destroying America with your rap.
You're so full of shit, I need to call hazmat. The only way I would ever apologize
I gotta go
if
on
I
record
had
with
my
this,
face
alright?
buried
I
in your
really
sister's
do.
thighs.
Never in 39 years have I ever seen anything.
Hazmat. The only way I would ever apologize
I gotta go
if
on
I
record
had
with
my
this,
face
alright?
buried
I
in your
really
sister's
do.
thighs.
Never in 39 years have I ever seen anything like
Okay, I'm sorry
It
for what
shows
it's worth,
the
but the best
fanaticism
part of you was the
of this fan
afterbirth.
base. And
If you
crazy
can't take a fucking joke, then go jump in the river. Na 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 na
Into the
na na
return of
na na,
Snap.
and I fucked your
To the point
sister.
where you
You
overshadowed
can't
the
take a fucking joke, then go jump in
Of
the
Ray
river. La 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 la
And it was
la
kind
la
of,
la,
for me,
and I fucked your sister.
if you want to continue to put this narrative out there that Cody finishing the story
What the fuck, dude?
is this big daunting task, and Cody has all these mountains to climb and all these brass rings to pull back.
And of course, we gotta thank our official music sponsor, Psych Ward, for the continued use of Funny Bone.
And my balls on her chin, she's bobbing her head to this fucking beat. Damn, dog, man, your sister's a freak. Hey, baby, you like the Eagles? Wanna hear something?
All right, here we go. Back in the saddle, as they say, yet again. Welcome back into Money's Crazy Mind. It's been a while. It's been a while. But there's a reason why this one has taken a little bit longer to bring to you guys than I originally wanted it to be. And we're going to get into all that. Plus, breaking news, coming attractions. We've got some stuff coming up here, man. We've got some stuff coming up here. And we want to present all of that to everybody here to make sure that you have the most up-to-date information about all things coming to the world of KZ Productions and KZ Radio. So, as you guys can see by the bump ahead of me, and as you saw in the bump before, this is kind of becoming an annual event for me. The suicide awareness and the suicide prevention show, and it's special in many ways. Mainly because as a suicide survivor myself, this is very personal to me. And a lot of my personal mental health struggles started because of my attempt, as it turns out. Or as I've kind of been able to figure out over the years because of different things that have kind of come about because of it. I wanted to move that Suicide Prevention Alliance logo over because Obviously, that's important, and I don't want it to be shadowed by the Ghostbusters poster. So I wanted to do this to kind of just give an update on different things, and there's some new tools and some new resources that are out there for folks who may have some suicidal ideology, or maybe are family members who have lost somebody due to suicide, or things like that. So we got tons of information here, and we're also going to put some information up on the screen as well. So let's kind of dive into it here. Let's get to our breaking news, and then we will get to our coming attractions, and then we will get into the bulk of the show here. So let's start with a little bit of breaking KZ news. Okay, so here it is. Here's the breaking news that we're going to get into here. We heard you. KZ Nation, we heard you. We heard all the complaints about the radio. We heard the complaints about the app. We heard the complaints about the website. We heard the complaints about everything. The date on this has changed, but we are going to be bringing you a brand new revamped version of KZ Radio next week, and a brand new website. We're also going to have an Alexa skill. We're also going to have revamped brand new apps as well. The apps are going to take a little bit, not nearly as long as it took us with the last one, but it is going to take a little bit. With this new streaming partner, they require a little bit of different information. But we are doing our best to get them that information as quickly as possible. But new version of KZ Radio coming very soon. Very soon. And we've already kind of tested it out a little bit. And we got to tell you, it is 1 million times better than what we had before. So stay tuned to all of KZ Productions' social medias for when we are launching the brand new KZ Radio. All right, so coming up here tomorrow on KZ Productions, we are going to have the next installment of the retrospective Women's Health Summits, dealing all with the mind. So April, May, and June's shows. This one's going to be about 2.5 hours again, but that goes live on KZ Productions at 1 p.m. You don't want to miss it. If you thought the shenanigans between Lisa and Jess were bad the first time around, then you add me into the mix. The shenanigans were on point. We'll just put it that way. Don't miss the Women's Health Summit retrospective tomorrow, 1 p.m. All right, so let's kind of get into the suicide awareness and suicide prevention part of this. We got through the coming attractions. We got to the breaking news. If there's time at the end of the show, we'll dive into a couple of other little things that I had originally had planned to discuss. But as of right now, let's just get into the cusp of this, because there is a lot to get to. Now, even on like the CDC's website, the Suicide Prevention Hotline's website, things like that, all of the information is based on 2022 numbers, because they are still finalizing the numbers from 2023. I know it's hard to believe. It is Saturday, November 23rd, 2024, and we're still trying to finalize the numbers, the suicide numbers from 2023. But I did have an updated number from the end of September, and that was the most recent 2023 numbers that I could find on the internet. So that just kind of tells you how much of this is hard to determine just based on or to discover for 1 year's numbers. So let's get into this information here. U.S. suicides last year remained at about the highest level in the nation's history. A little more than 49,300 suicide deaths were reported in 2023, according to provisional data from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. That number could grow a little as some death investigations are wrapped and reported. Just under 49,500 were reported in 2022, according to final data released Thursday. So think about that. The final data for 2022 was not released until the end of September 2024. I think we can do better. The numbers are close enough that the suicide rate for the 2 years are the same, CDC officials are saying. U.S. suicide rates have risen for nearly 20 years, aside from a 2-year drop around the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, quote, a leveling off of any increase in suicide is cautiously promising news, said Catherine Keyes, a Columbia University public health professor who studies suicide. And this is from a article by the Associated Press. Indeed, there is reason for optimism. A 2-year-old national crisis line allows anyone in the U.S. to dial 988, and we're going to get into that a little bit later in the show, to reach mental health specialists. That and other efforts made by may be starting to pay off, Key says, but it really remains to be seen. Experts caution that suicide, the nation's 11th leading cause of death in 2022, is complicated and that attempts can be driven by a range of factors. Contributors include higher rates of depression, limited availability to mental health services, and the availability of guns. About 55% of all suicides in 2022 involve firearms. We're going to get more into that a little bit later on as well. The CDC's Thursday report said suicide was the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 14 and 20 to 34, and the third leading for people 15 to 19. Deaths continue to be more common among boys and men than girls and women. The highest suicide rate for any group by far was men ages 75 and older, at about 44 suicides per 100,000 men at that age. Among women, the highest rate was in those who were middle-aged, about 9 per 100,000, but more dramatic increases have been seen in teens and younger women, with the rate for that group doubling in the last 2 decades. The overall suicide rate in 22 and 23 was 14.2 per 100,000. It was also that high in 2018. Before then, it hadn't been that high since 1941. So some key points that you can take away from all that information that I just read you. Suicide and suicide attempts are still a serious public health challenge. Suicide and suicidal behavior are influenced by negative conditions in which people live, play, work, and learn. Some groups experience more negative conditions or factors related to suicide, and addressing these negative conditions and factors can help prevent suicide and suicide attempts. So let's take a look at that graphic that I brought up a little bit earlier when we were talking about that. Over 49,000 people died by suicide in 2022, as we just read from the CDC's report. That equals to 1 death every 11 minutes. Many adults think about suicide or attempt suicide. 13.2 million seriously thought about suicide. 3.8 million made a plan for suicide, and 1.6 million attempted suicide. That's a lot of information to take in. And before we get into some of the things here that we're going to talk about, I want to talk about some of the other information that was in that report. And I have a lot of the information from the report right here. Firearms are the most common method used in suicides. Firearms were used in more than 50% of suicides. And then the second most, so you had 55% were firearm. 25% were suffocation, 12% were poisoning, and then 8% were other. And it doesn't say what the other is, it just says other. Some groups have disproportionately high rates of suicide. The racial ethnic groups with the highest rates in 2022 were non-Hispanic Indian and Alaska Native people and non-Hispanic white people. So for non-Hispanic American Indian and Alaskan people, it was 27.1%. For non-Hispanic white people, it was 17.6%. Non-Hispanic Native Hawaiian was 14.3%. Multiracial was 10.5%, Black was 9%, and Hispanic was 8.1%. So, the suicide rates differ by age. Adults aged 35 to 64 account for 46.8% of all suicides in the United States. Suicide is the 8th leading cause of death for that age group. Among men, suicide rates were highest for non-Hispanic, American Indian, or Alaskan Native men at 41.3 suicides per, followed by white, which was 35.7 per 100,000. Women in that age group were the highest among non-Hispanic, American Indians, or Alaskan Native women at 12.8 per 100,000, and white women 10.7 per 100,000. Adults aged 75 and older have one of the highest suicide rates at 20.3 per 100,000. Men had a rate of 42.2 per 100,000 compared to other age groups. Non-Hispanic white men have the highest suicide rate compared to other racial and ethnic men in this group, 50.1 to 100,000. For youth and young adults, age 10 to 24, accounts for 15% of all suicides. Suicide rate for this group is 11 per 100,000, is lower than other age groups. However, suicide is the second leading cause of death for this age group, accounting for 7,126 deaths. Additionally, suicide rates for this age group have increased 52.2% from 2000 to 2021. Youth and young adults most impacted included non-Hispanic American Indian or Alaskan Native, with a suicide rate of 33.3 per 100,000. Youth and young adults have the highest rate of emergency department visits for self-harm. In 2020, the emergency department visit rate for this age group was 354.4 per 100,000, compared with 128.9 per 100,000 among middle-aged adults 35 to 64. There were an estimated 224,341 emergency department visits for self-harm among youth and young adults. Girls and young women are at particularly high risk, with their emergency department visit rate at 514.4 per 100,000, being approximately twice the rate of emergency department visits among boys and young men at 200.5 per 100,000. The rate of emergency department visits among girls in 2020 was approximately double compared to 2001, 244.3. In 2021, 9% of high school students reported attempting suicide during the previous 12 months. Suicide attempts were reported most frequently among girls compared to boys, at 12.4% versus 5.3%. And among non-Hispanic American Indian or Alaskan Native students at 20.1%. The suicide rate among males in 2022 was approximately 4 times higher than the rate among females, making up 50% of the population, but nearly 80% of suicides. And that's per 100,000 population, age-adjusted rates, but males were 23%, as females were only 5.9%. So there's some shocking information that we're about to give here. And that is, we already kind of talked about race and ethnicity, but now we're going to talk about the LGBTQ community, veterans, and people with disabilities. And I think some of this information might be a little shocking to some of you. And I know we're kind of just going through like stats and statistics right now. But I think that this stuff is important. And it's important because if we know who is more at risk and who is more likely to attempt suicide or commit suicide or things like that, then we can definitely help those people a little bit better. And point them in the direction that they need to go to get help. So suicide ideation, that means people thinking about committing suicide, is higher amongst people with disabilities. Now, limited data is available for on how many suicides actually are among people with disabilities. However, A recent survey highlighted that in 2021, adults with disabilities were 3 times more likely to report suicide ideation in the past month compared to people without disabilities. So 30.6% versus 8.3% in the general United States population. Prior research also shows that the prevalence of reported mental distress, which is a risk factor for suicide, was 4.6 times higher among people with disabilities at 32.9%, than among people without disabilities at 7.2%. Moving the keyboard because I want the microphone a little bit closer. Suicide risk is higher among people who identify as lesbian, gay, or bisexual. Data are limited on the frequency of suicide among people who identify as a sexual minority. However, research shows that high school students who identify as a sexual minority have a higher prevalence of suicide attempts compared to heterosexual students. In 2021, more than a quarter, 26.3% of high school students identifying as lesbian, gay, or bisexual reported attempting suicide in the prior 12 months. This is 5 times higher than the prevalence among heterosexual students at 5.2. Data from 2020 shows that the prevalence of individuals reporting suicide attempts in the prior 12 months among adult sexual minorities decreased with age, from 5.5% among people ages 18 to 25 to 2.2% amongst people 26 to 49. So that's kind of interesting if you think about it. And well, maybe not. Because now that I'm putting the thought together in my head, and that's why I do this show off the cuff, I don't try to plan anything. I mean, obviously, I have all this information here from the 2022 report. But I don't sit there and I don't, like, think about, like, my follow-ups and things like that in advance. I like that to be off the cuff and, you know, just shooting. I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit more PG than normal. But that's kind of interesting. If the risk is higher amongst people in that sexual minority group, then, you know, why do the numbers go down as they get older? Is it maybe because they're finally getting more comfortable with themselves? And that's kind of where I was going with that initial thought was when you're a teenager, you're still, in most cases, you're still trying to figure out exactly who you are. And I mean, that's everything. That's not just sexual identity. That is everything. You're trying to figure out what group you most likely fit into and things like that. And we've done subcultures and things like that in the past. And I know that the subcultures are kind of a thing of the past as we learned on that subculture show. But, you know, you still fit in with that one group of people. And for a lot of teenagers, I would think, because I mean, back in my day, but we're talking, you know, it's been 20 plus years since I've been a teenager. But you know, back in that time, teenagers were still kind of trying to figure out just who they were and where they belonged. And I don't just mean in like a social circle or anything like that, but also who they were sexually, where they fit in sexually. And the crazy thing is that even some of the people that I went to high school are adults now, and they're still trying to figure that out. But, you know, I mean, that's just being human, and I'll leave it at that. But I did find that kind of interesting that the numbers went down as sexual minorities get older. But again, I think that's just because they're becoming more comfortable with who they are and things like that. But suicide rates. So now this is people who are committing suicide. are higher among veterans. In 2020, 6,146 veterans died by suicide. It was the 13th leading cause of death among veterans overall, and the second leading cause of death among veterans under the age of 45. Veterans have an age-adjusted suicide rate that is 57.3% greater than the non-veteran U.S. adult population. Veterans account for about 13.9% of suicides among adults in the United States. I'm going to say that again. Veterans account for about 13.9% of suicides amongst adults in the United States, and is the second leading cause of death among veterans under the age of 45. Additionally, in 2019, 1.6% of veteran young adults aged 18 to 25 reported making a suicide attempt during the previous 12 months. That was an increase from 0.9% just 10 years prior in 2009. Suicide rates vary by race and ethnicity. Age-adjusted suicide rates are highest amongst Hispanic, American Indian, and Alaskan Native people, 28.1 per 100,000, and white people, 17.4 per 100,000. It is the ninth leading cause of death between American Indian and Alaskan people. They have a higher age-adjusted rate of suicide, 28.1 per 100,000, compared with Hispanic, American Indian, and Native Alaskan Native people at 2 per 100,000. Suicide rate among non-Hispanic, American Indian, and Alaskan Native males aged 15 to 34 is 82.1 per 100,000 and is the 11th leading cause of death for both Hispanic and non-Hispanic people of all races. That's an astonishing number, that it's the 11th lead. So I want to kind of talk about all the information that we just looked at, because like I said, this is all information from the 2022 report. And I'll be interested to see what the final report for 2023 looks like. So I'll definitely have to make a note to myself that when we do this again next year, to compare the numbers, the final numbers. I mean, we're at 200 less as of the end of September from 2022. The final number for 2023 was, I believe, like 49,490 something. So just under 49,500. So this is obviously something that, well, it has gotten slightly better. I mean, as the CDC said, I mean, it's very hard to say that there's been a decrease when the numbers are so close. Now, I mean, 200 more people not doing this is definitely a plus. I'm not trying to make it all doom and gloom and things like that. This is why I'm doing this, to educate and to help people, and to help people not make a similar mistake to what I made in my own life. But what is staggering to me about all of this is, again, here we are in 2024, almost at the end of 2024, and we don't even know exactly what the final numbers for the year of 2023 are. And that to me is kind of shocking. And I kind of wish it wasn't that way, because it's not even going to be like, we're going into 2025. That means it's not going to be until 2026 that we even get the numbers for 2024. So there's still a 2-year gap in between when the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and even the suicide prevention facilities out there are getting the numbers for the most recent year. I mean, obviously they have some of them, because, you know, that report, you know, was from the end of September, where they had the 49,300, a little more than 49,300 deaths in 2023. But that's still a large gap of time in between that. You know, and I'm going to share a little bit about personal experience here, and then we're going to get into risk factors and things like that for suicide. I thought I had my mental challenges in check. I thought I was okay. And then I pretended to a lot of people to not... I guess I should say I pretended to a lot of people to just hide what I was actually going through and to hide how I was feeling. But not only did I hide it and pretend that I was okay, I wasn't listening to people when they were telling me that I'm not. You know, and I just kept telling myself, oh, it's nothing, you know, it's just, I'm tired, it's, you know, I'm under a lot of stress right now. And I kind of just want to take everybody back to, like, when this was all going on for me, right? Right at the height of lockdown for the COVID pandemic in 2020, I had got promoted at work. I'll share the places I work at now. I don't even fucking care. But I was working at Popeyes, and I was a assistant general manager, and I was working with somebody that I had recently worked with at Burger King, and she had left, and once she got settled in and things were going well at Popeyes, she called me and she said, you know, the writing's kind of on the wall with what's going on at Burger King. And I think because I was one of her managers and because of a workers' comp claim that I had had against them and everything, things were not going very well for me there. I wasn't being treated very fairly. I wasn't being treated very well. And, you know, there were constant transfers and other things that were going on. And so I left and I went to Popeyes. You know, and because I had already worked with that person before, things were kind of good. We went together very well. We knew each other. We know how each other work. We know what each other, does and schedules and things like that. And then right before COVID hit, right before the beginning of 2020, I get promoted to general manager, and I'm going to take over my own store, and I'm very happy about that. And I had a lot of big plans, and I was talking to Shar just about every day, who was my general manager previous to that, and the person that I came to Popeyes for. And things were going really good. My store was like the top ranked store and everything like that, and then COVID hit. And obviously nobody was having a good time during COVID, especially if you worked in the restaurant industry. Like, it was just not a good day every day. And my store was so small that I could only have 4 people, period, in the store at one time. My store had a dual drive-through, and 4 people running a fast food restaurant when you have lines around the corner and down the block is not ideal. So about a month into the pandemic, they're not happy with me. Like, my store went from top to bottom. And I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm limited by the regulations set forth by the CDC. I'm limited by the regulations excuse me, set forth by the government. This is not something that I'm trying to do to self-sabotage myself or make it seem like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. This is just where I'm at. So, excuse me. So unfortunately, they make the decision to demote me. And I don't go back to where I was because they've already replaced me. And I'm not bitter about that point. I mean, they had to do what they had to do. But they send me to a store with somebody who was just promoted to general manager. And they want me to show this person how to be a better general manager. So I'm not good enough to be a general manager, but I'm good enough to train them. And that alone right there is just so I'm dealing with that now. And then that person just can't handle the pressure, can't handle anything, and they quit. So now not only am I not the general manager, but I'm the acting general manager because they can't find one to replace the general manager. And I'm just like, well, what the fuck is going on here, right? Like, this should be a sign that maybe things aren't going very well right now because you can't keep general managers. You would think, right? So then they bring in somebody else, and that was actually my replacement that was working with my previous GM. And again, it's more of the same. This guy doesn't know shit. He doesn't know what he's doing. And I was getting tired of it. I get an offer to leave to go and work with a friend of mine at another restaurant, so I left. That person was trying to get me to come quicker than I could, because I am one of those people that believe in, you never, even if you're fed up and you're done and you're never going to go back to that place, you always quit on good terms just in case. So I go there and things are going great for a while. And then the GM that I was originally working for got transferred to another store. The person that they had take over for her then goes to another store as well. And I end up, being asked if I can go with him. The idea was originally to make me their assistant, blah, blah, yada, yada. They then immediately move him and send him somewhere else and bring the manager that I was originally working with back. Now, I had originally started out at the Pearl Road location, which is right up the street from my house in Parma, Ohio, in case you're not listening to this in the state of Ohio. And then I got transferred to Oberlin, Ohio, which, depending on which way you go, and I always took the freeway back in those days, it could be anywhere between 40 minutes to an hour away, depending on traffic, weather, etc., so on. So, I had kind of asked after about a few months being there and realizing that I was putting 3,000 miles on my car a month and getting an oil change every month, that, it would be nice if they could attempt to reimburse me for some of that. They said no. What else that was going on around this time was my wife and I were finally starting to get heavily into planning our wedding. We're not even planning our wedding, finalizing our wedding, because it had been delayed 3 times because of COVID. And, we weren't angry about that. We completely understand that, but we scheduled it and then COVID happened. And then, they say things are going to open up again around this time. So we reschedule it around that time. And then things don't open back up. So then we have to reschedule it again. And then we had to obviously push ours back a little bit because of, people that were scheduled before us that are now having to push their weddings back because, of things that are just outside of all of our control. I would start mentioning dates and things that need to be done and things like that to my boss. And the answer I would always get was, I don't have anybody to do that. Or I don't have anybody to take your place. You're going to have to find another time to do that. Well, that's kind of not fair to me because this is when this stuff can get done. And then on top of that, the one thing I said I did not want to do because I was getting older and because of, the wedding stuff and everything like that, the one shift I did not want to work was third shift because I would be sleeping all day and up all night, which means I couldn't get anything done at that point. And then that's when I started to get scheduled. Because of all of this and because there was so much that needed to get done, my fiance at the time, wife now, wasn't coming home. She was staying at her mother's because what's the point of her coming home if I'm unconscious? And when she's trying to sleep, because that's when she works, is during the day, I'm up or I'm not even home. I didn't blame her for any of the things that she was doing, but it was starting to affect me. It was starting to affect me pretty badly. Easter 2022 rolls around, and I was supposed to get off at a certain time. I had already worked, I think 13, almost 14 hours at that point. I came in at 9 p.m. that night, and by this point it was 9 a.m. So 12 hours. And she wanted me to stay a couple more hours, to help with the breakfast rush and everything like that. And I'm like, what breakfast rush? I doubt we're going to have a breakfast rush this year because this is the first time that everybody's able to go and be with their families since COVID. So, I want to go home. Like, I got family coming over. Like, I need to go home. Sorry, I was just checking some settings. It was, either stay and have a job or quit or leave and get fired. And so since I need a job, oh, fuck my hair. When we cut to break here in about 10 minutes, I'm going to go get a hat, apparently. So I need a job, because obviously I'm trying to finalize paying for a wedding and everything like that. So I stay. By the time I get home, I had to call my mom and, call my family and say, don't bother coming over because I just got home from work and I need to get some sleep because I need to be back at work at 11 o'clock at night. So, not only that, but I had a broken tooth in the back of my mouth and my mouth was just killing me at the time. And all the stores in Oberlin were closed because of Easter. So I had to drive home with this pain in my tooth, plus being pissed off because of everything else that was going on. Not knowing if my, fiance is going to leave me or not because of everything that's going on. And so I get home, I stop at the local CVS here that's right up the street from my house, and I buy a bottle of painkillers very similar to this one right here. About the same size, too. And the last thing I remember is turning on the TV, cracking open the bottle, and that's it. The next thing I know, it's 11:30 at night. My phone is blowing up like crazy. And I'm violently vomiting. I look, and the bottle of pills is empty. And on the floor. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, my cats. Like, I'm not even thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my cats. Like, did my cats get a hold of these? Where are the cats? The one cat is sitting on my chest. The other one is down at my feet, and they both seem fine. So I'm like, okay, thank God. Maybe they're not the ones that took them. Maybe it was me. So I start, violently vomiting again. And I'm looking, and there's the pills coming up out of my stomach. And I'm just like, it was me. Mind you, my phone is going bananas because I'm a half hour late for work. And, I finally answer it, and I'm like, look, I just attempted suicide. I need to go to the hospital and get my stomach pumped. No remorse whatsoever coming out of my boss's mouth. Okay? This is the first time I think I've shared her reaction to what happened, okay? Oh, isn't that just fucking perfect? Well, I guess hopefully I'll see you tomorrow, and you better have a doctor's note. Click. The next day I call a buddy of mine, and I tell him what happened, and he's just like, dude, this job is literally now killing you. You need to walk away. You need to be done. I said, I agree. Walked in that day. There you go. This is my 2-week notice. I'm done. Again, like I said, always quitting the right way. But you never know. You never know what could trigger somebody. And the fact that I blacked most of it out and still to this day don't even remember what happened for me to feel that way. I mean, obviously I know. I mean, but, like, just those hours in between, like, did I just, the fucking bottle, or did I take a couple? wait, take a couple more, wait, take a couple more. You know, I mean, I don't know what happened during those hours. You know, and we're talking 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, maybe even until 11:30 at night. That's 12 and a half hours of time that I'm missing. And I'm not blaming it on an alien abduction because I'm vomiting pills. And I thought I was over all that. like I said, before that, it was kind of just naivetism. I think, naivetism. I don't even think that's a word, but just naive thoughts. Like, that was stuff I did when I was a teenager. I don't need to worry about that now. I'm an adult. I have my emotions in check, or so I thought. But it isn't the last time. It isn't. And we'll get into that and the risk factors and the warning signs when we come back right here on KZ Productions, KZ Radio, and Money's Crazy Mind. Here's Psych Ward.
Suicide, it's a suicide. Suicide, it's a suicide. Suicide, it's a suicide. Suicide, it's a suicide.
Homicide, suicide, it's all the same. How many times have I played this game? Held the knife tight to my throat. How many times have I wrote, fuck you, fuck me, there ain't no blame. Does anyone else feel the same? Inside my brain is racing outside. I wanna get away, I just wanna hide. Lock myself away from the world. All this over a fucking girl. Said she loved me, probably not. Now a mouthful of shotgun is all I got. Toe on the trigger, ready to blast. Tell the world to kiss my ass.
Suicide, it's a suicide. Suicide, it's a suicide. Suicide, it's a suicide. Suicide, it's a suicide.
Suicide the only way out this life. The camera's in the corner. Note wrote to my father. Brains running down the wall. I guess the thoughts behind me now. But wait a second. Maybe I'll just swallow a key. Put a bag on my head. Duct tape it on very tightly. Handcuff my hands behind my back. Lay back and let suicide suffocation affect suicide. Shotgun pills. You decide which way you die. It's a game we all will play. Game over.
Suicide, it's a suicide. 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 Suicide, it's a suicide.
Yep, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around every once in a while, you could miss it.
Fuck the world, I'm at the end of my rope. Another lost life without hope. I hate myself for what I put me through. I hate the world, bitch, and I hate you. So fuck it, I'm going out coked up. Try to stop me, bitch, get fucked up. Last day alive, going out quickly. When I die, I'm taking y'all with me. Shooting up the classroom halls, shooting up the bathroom stalls. Was it worth it? You decide. This is motherfucking part 2 to Columbine.
All right. We are back. Back for our numero dos here on KZ Productions. Very soon to be KZ Radio as well. Obviously, we're going to wait to launch this there until the new one is all set up and ready to go. During the break, I took myself an allergy pill, so maybe the sneezing will stop. Where we left off in the first hour was I had just told you guys about my attempt, and I'm very grateful, very, very, very grateful that I survived that. Obviously, I'm married now. I have a phenomenal job with phenomenal support and everything. I'm also in therapy now. But that doesn't mean that and I don't even want to say the ideology, because I never really thought about killing myself again, but getting to that dark place where it's kind of just like, why the fuck am I still here? Why am I still feeling this way? I mean, I'm on medication now. I'm on, I have a therapist. I'm in, to quote Godsmack, because it's the only thing I can think of, I'm doing the best I ever did. And there's so much good going on right now. Why do I feel this way? So let's kind of get into that a little bit. At the beginning of this year, well, actually, let's rewind a little bit. At the end of 2023, I made the decision to leave. No, that's as high as it gets. Damn. I made the decision to leave Redline Radio, and I have no problem saying their name or anything like that. And there's a reason, and we'll get into that in a minute. I'm not going to go deep into detail or anything like that. I'm just going to give the main reason why I left, and then kind of what was going on into the first half of 2024. But in June of last year, so we're going to go back even a little bit further. In June of last year, I was, kind of just starting out at the job I'm at now. I was under a training schedule and everything like that. I had no control over when I worked, who I worked with, when I needed to be, and anything like that. It was the training schedule. It was whenever the trainers were there. And, previous to that, there had been some things going on. Arm of my glasses got stuck in the headphones. Where, it was just getting harder and harder for me to dedicate the time that I needed to dedicate for Redline. And I know I said I was going to go grab a hat, but whatever. You guys have already seen my fucked up hair, so what's the point? I just couldn't dedicate the time that I needed to dedicate. And then June comes around and I suffer a heart attack. And, the year previous to that, the owner of Redline Radio had suffered his own heart attack, and I had kind of taken over the day-to-day operations of the radio station and everything like that. Didn't complain about it once. I had a lot of, support behind me and things like that. And then, it kind of seemed like there was no, hey, I've been there. I know what you're going through. Take all the time you need to get better kind of situation like he had. And, I kind of felt left to the wolves at that point. And, my health situation wasn't getting any better. It was kind of just getting worse. And, nothing was working to try to get me better. And the amount of stress I was under and things like that, it was just beginning to be too much. So I said, I got to walk away. I'm sorry, but I got to walk away. And that was not reciprocated very well. So I left. So fast forward to the beginning of 2024, and one of the other people that originally worked behind the scenes at Redline Radio made the decision to leave as well. And she was kind of starting her own thing and everything like that. And I kind of told her, like, look, there's the reason I walked away from Redline. I want to do my own thing, but if you have any questions or anything like that, obviously don't hesitate to ask. So she's building into that, and, she had brought in some people and they weren't working out and things like that. And then all of a sudden, her mother died. And she's in the middle of trying to build this new thing. So I was kind of helping her with that. And, while she was dealing with the loss of her mother, I was trying to help out with, her building her own radio station, her building her own podcasting studio and everything like that, so that there wasn't a lot of burden on her so that she could deal with what she was dealing with. Fast forward to February, Valentine's Day, as a matter of fact, and the band that's been playing the music behind me all day, Psych Ward, my wife and I had just kind of finished dinner. We're getting ready to head to bed, to close out Valentine's Day night, and my phone goes off. And I know I've told this story, and we did the episode on grief, to kind of, talk about not only what I was going through, but what, Lisa, the owner of KZ Productions and KZ Radio, was going through. And we brought in Jess, the host of the Women's Health Summit, because of the topic of what we were talking about. But, I get the phone call that Randy, Mr. Sick from Psych Ward, had died in his sleep. My wife then loses her job. Her aunt then dies. My mom gets diagnosed with cancer. My dad needs emergency heart surgery. And then we're to June, and it's the anniversary of the heart attack. And all of this shit kind of just happening at once, and now I'm deeply embedded into the creation of KZ Productions and KZ Radio, and and I'm not complaining about any of it, because obviously I'm here. You see the KZ Radio and the KZ Productions logos there on my sponsor scroll and everything, and it's it's what I wanted to do. You know, Lisa asked me for help. Jess asked me for help. You know, because nothing else that they had tried worked out, and they were, you know, they knew the vision that they wanted, and you know, it was kind of a similar vision to what I had, and you know, for what I wanted Nameless Faceless Productions to be. So it's like, well, why not combine forces, Nameless Faceless and KZ, and you know, get everything going, and then all of this other stuff, you know, kind of just fell in place behind it. And it had just gotten to a point to where it was just like, I don't care anymore. I don't care about Money's Crazy Mind. I don't care about work. I don't care about this. And then things would start to happen at work where it was kind of just like, well, why am I getting passed up for this? Like, what did I do to deserve to get passed up for this? And to have other people that you know, I personally felt didn't deserve to be there get this opportunity over me. Why is it that when I sit there and I tell my supervisor, hey, that's something I want to do, somebody else is getting that opportunity? Or why is it when I'm sitting there saying, I have managerial experience, why can't I do this? Or, you know, I have teaching experience, why can't I do this? You know, it was just all those things. And it cost me a really awesome friendship. And I kept asking myself, like, what's going on with this? Like, why am I feeling this way? What is causing this? Because I couldn't answer it. Because again, you know, stupidly, I think I have everything in check. So I start working from home. And I start having time to sit there and reflect on everything that's going on, right? And at least I had the wherewithal to do that. And I said, okay, I have a therapist now. Let me tell the therapist what's going on. Don't lie to him. You know, and not that I was lying to him before, but just, you know, like I got to tell him what's going on and how I feel. And, you know, I just want to make sure that, you know, everything is okay. Or what I need to do to stop having this happen. You know, and then I go to my doctor and we adjust my medication for, you know, my blood pressure and my heart issues. And then, and I tell him in front of my wife, you know, I tell him, like, you know, I just feel like this really interesting, really deep depression that I've never kind of felt before. And again, to steal a line from Metallica, you know, it's kind of like this unnamed feeling. It's not suicidal ideology, but it's just kind of this I don't give a fuck feeling. And it's definitely causing me to lash out, and it's causing me to get manic about things, and it's causing me to stress about things that I should not be stressing about. And he said, well, let's try an antidepressant and let's just see how it goes. And you know, ever since I got on that antidepressant, things have been getting better. And I was starting to understand what I was going through and starting to understand the feelings that I was feeling. And then a couple of months ago at work, they brought in somebody from the local Cleveland and Cuyahoga County suicide prevention team to talk with us about, you know, risk factors, warning signs, and, you know, all the stuff that we just talked about, all those numbers that we just talked about and everything like that. And that is kind of when I started putting all of this together. And I said, this year is going to be the year to educate. And that's exactly what we're doing. And to share my experiences with, not just battling suicide, but battling depression. And that's why I shared that most recent story of, I don't give a fuck that I was going through in the middle of the year. And how I finally realized that there actually was something wrong and that I needed to do something about it. And that's why I brought all that up. But let's I talked about some personal stuff a lot longer than I wanted to. But I think it's important for everyone to hear a personal journey as well as just the statistics and the the risk factors, the warning signs, the stigmas that are associated with all of this. To kind of put a human face on it, just in case there's people out there that don't have a human face for it. Well, now you have one. And that's why I do this. That's why I do it every year. That's why I make it a point to do this every year. But let's get into the risk factors. Risk factors are characteristics that make it more likely that someone will consider, attempt, or die by suicide. They can't cause or predict a suicide attempt, but they're important to be aware of. A lot of the risk factors are mental disorders, particularly mood disorders, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders, and certain personality disorders, alcohol and other substance use disorders, hopelessness, impulsive and or aggressive tendencies, history of trauma or abuse, major physical illness, previous suicide attempts, a family history of suicide, job or financial loss, loss of relationship or relationships, easy access to lethal means, local clusters of suicide, lack of social support and a sense of isolation, stigma associated with asking for help, a lack of health care, especially mental health and substance abuse treatment, cultural and religious beliefs, such as the belief that suicide is a noble resolution of a personal dilemma, exposure to others who have died by suicide in real life or via the media and internet. And let me just say that there are definitely more risk factors than that. And that's kind of why I shared some of my stuff. Now, obviously, a lot of those risk factors I do fall into. I have anxiety disorders, but I also have depression. Previous suicide attempts. I do have a major physical illness. Job or financial loss. I didn't really lose my job or lose my finances, but my wife did. Loss of relationship or relationships. I did lose some friends during that time when I was being a dick. In my original attempt, I did feel like I had the lack of social support and a sense of isolation. There was the stigma associated with asking for help. Lack of health care, especially mental health and substance abuse treatment. So obviously not the substance abuse part of it, but, the lack of mental health, especially during COVID. So there's definitely risk factors there that I've had. Just think about some of the stuff that's there. And if you know somebody that's kind of going through a lot of that stuff or going through a lot of those situations, make sure you make an attempt to just, give them a ring one day and be like, hey, buddy, you okay? Do you need something? Let them know that you care about them. Let them know that they're thought about. The more that you're there for them, the less likely they're going to be to want to do something. And I definitely agree with that. It may not 100% stop it. It may not 100% stop it, but it can definitely help to prevent it. Know the warning signs. Some warning signs may help you to determine if a loved one is at risk for suicide, especially if the behavior is new, has increased, or seems related to a painful event, loss, or change. If you or someone you know exhibits any of these, even if it's just one, seek help by calling the 988 Lifeline. And before we get in to the warning signs, again, if you or someone you know exhibits any of these risk factors or warning signs, seek help by calling the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. This is not just for people who are having suicidal ideology or are attempting suicide, or family members that have lost someone due to suicide. This is for any kind of emotional crisis, mental crisis, and obviously for family and friends to seek help for their loved one who they feel may be having suicidal ideology. I just wanted to share that to let everyone know that that lifeline is 100% available. Put this back over here. But now let's go into the warning signs. Talking about wanting to die or kill themselves. Looking for a way to kill themselves, like searching online or buying a gun. Talking about feeling hopeless or having no reason to live. Talking about feeling trapped or in unbearable pain. Talking about being a burden to others. Increasing the use of alcohol or drugs. Acting anxious or agitated. Behaving recklessly. Sleeping too little or too much. Withdrawing or isolating themselves. Showing rage or talking about seeking revenge. And extreme mood swings. Again, the good thing is that like the most extreme of these, I have never, I didn't exhibit, or at least I didn't know I exhibited. Talking about wanting to die or killing themselves. I've never done that. Never. Looking for a way to kill themselves, like searching online or buying a gun. I mean, I always said, and so maybe I did talk about wanting to die or kill themselves, but actually, yeah, I did now that I think about it. But, I never said it would be by gun. I don't like guns, and I would never use one on myself, so for me, it was either, or hanging myself. Like that was always what it was with me. Talking about feeling hopeless or no reason to live. Yeah. And that was in this most recent bout of struggle as well. Talking about being a burden to others. Yep, definitely that one. Increasing the use of alcohol or drugs? No. I mean, I haven't really done that in a long time. I've never done drugs, but I got out of the drinking thing a long time ago. Sleeping too little or too much? Yep, definitely that. Withdrawing or isolating themselves? Yep, definitely did that. Showing rage or talking about seeking revenge? No. Showing rage, yes, but seeking revenge, no. Extreme mood swings, most definitely. So there we go. I mean, these are the warning signs of somebody having a mental crisis or somebody having, suicidal ideology or going to attempt. So there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Acting anxious or agitated, behaving recklessly. Yeah, I did that one too because I skipped that one when we were going back over them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 out of 11 warning signs I've exhibited at some point or another. And I think a lot of it goes to the fact that there's still a lot of people out there that believe that there's this stigma of how suicide affects people. And how if someone has the ideology in their head that this is what they're going to do, there's no stopping it. The only way that there's going to be no way to stop it is if you don't follow the warning signs and you don't follow the risk factors and you don't look into the information that is made publicly available through multiple websites on how you can potentially save someone's life. And yes, I know I just had papers in that hand. Those are old papers. These are the ones that we haven't gotten to yet. And there's still 1, 2, 3, 4 pages left. And there's not a lot of information on these 4 pages, but for me, this is the most important part of what we're going to do here. And we're going to talk about the stigma that still, to this day in 2024, surrounds suicide. And look at that. My microphone glows green. That's pretty fucking cool. It's kryptonite, ladies and gentlemen, even though I'm a Batman fan. My microphone has kryptonite in it, so that way Superman can't steal Batman's microphone. Either that or that green guy behind me got to it. Adding a little levity to a very heavy topic. But that to me is kind of like the most shocking thing is, we're putting so much of an emphasis on trying to bring awareness to mental health and bring awareness to mental health, problems and things like that. But yet the most prevalent one and the one that leads the country in death is still the one that is the hardest to get assistance for and to get people to talk about. And I think a lot of it falls, I don't want to say falls, but I think a lot of it kind of comes into play because, and this is just based on my own personal experience, right? For my wife, it was very hard for me to talk to her about these things, or for her to talk to me about these things, I should say, because she's never really dealt with them before. She's in a way dealt with depression, but never really suicidal ideology or anything of that magnitude, right? But when I brought it up to my friend Tony, and I brought it up to a couple other people, they're like, well, you definitely need to tell your now wife what's going on. And I did, but there was always that, is she going to be disappointed? Is that going to change how she feels about me? Is that going to change, everything that's going on, And then you flip that coin to the other side, and then there's me, where how do you tell somebody that this is something that just happened? How do you breach the subject of, hey, I just tried to kill myself? How do you breach the subject of, hey, I'm not feeling okay? There's all of that goes into it too. And all of that kind of surrounds the stigma, because the people that are having these feelings, they don't think anybody cares or gives a fuck and wants to listen to it. And then there's the other end of it where it's like, oh my God, this person's coming to me for help. How do I help them? But a lot of the stigma, how does the suicide stigma affect people? And I think some of this is going to mirror a lot of what I just said about my own personal feelings on it. Suicide stigma negatively affects people by not seeking help when they need it, internalizing the stigma, and starting to believe the myths and negative stereotypes. Feeling ashamed or embarrassed, feeling lonely or socially isolated. Relationships with family, friends, and colleagues become strained due to misunderstanding and insensitive comments. When grieving, feeling blamed, shamed, and judged, as well as isolated and rejected by friends and community. I think that pretty much is exactly what I just said about how I was feeling about it. But now there's ways to overcome that stigma. If you are experiencing stigma about suicide, overcoming it may not be an easy task. But there are things you can do to help deal with it. Get the help you need. Don't worry about what people might think. If you are distressed or not feeling like yourself, speak to someone you know, or a healthcare professional. Getting treatment and support can help. Avoid isolation. Don't let worry, shame, or guilt keep you from seeing your friends, family, and the wider community. People in your life can support you if they know you are struggling. We're going to do something here. Don't Where's the reverb? Don't let... What the fuck? Hello. Really? Hello, hello? God damn it. All right, well, never mind. I was hoping to do something cool with that, but apparently not. It worked before. I don't know why it doesn't work now. Anyway, I was going to put a echo on this to kind of make it seem like I'm, Anyway, don't let the stigma get to you. I will say that again. Don't let the stigma get to you. Try not to see your situation as a sign of weakness or that you should be able to snap out of it and move on. Be mindful of any negative self-talk. You are not to blame for how you feel. There is no shame in asking for help. And then you can always join an online community. There are different support groups for people impacted by suicide. I'm sorry. That line, about don't let the stigma get to you. Don't try to see your situation. Just that whole thing. I mean, it just brought back so many thoughts about my own situation, and just kind of kicking myself a little bit for what I put myself through. But how to break the suicide stigma? According to the Mental Health Commission, suicidal distress, suicide attempts, and suicide will affect most people at some point in their lives, often with long-lasting impacts. It also has wide-reaching impacts on family, careers, family, friends, I should say, and communities. So what can we do to help break the stigma of suicide to ensure that more people get the help they need? Look out for any suicide warning signs and start the conversation. If you are worried about someone, act on those thoughts and concerns and try to move past any of the discomfort you may feel. Starting the conversation and providing support can make a difference. Raise your voice. To help break down the stigma, people with lived experience shouldn't be expected to carry this weight alone. We can all play a part in tackling suicide stigma and discrimination and challenging suicide risks. So there you go. There you go, right there. That's why I do this. Because again, like I said, when I shared my personal experiences, my experience can help save somebody's life and help break the stigma and challenge the myths about suicide. Use safe, inclusive, and respectful language. The language we use plays an important role in shaping opinions and beliefs about suicide. Mindframe, which is a website that's out there on the web, has a language guide to support anyone who is communicating about suicide. So take a look into that. Examine your thought processes and understanding. Are they right? Could you be more sensitive around suicide stigma? Show compassion for anyone who is struggling and treat people with respect. Participate in campaigns or events that challenge the stigma. Suicide prevention campaigns include World Suicide Prevention Day, hashtag You Can Talk, and all the different things. Now, some of this, okay, a lot of this stuff about the stigma and everything I got from an Australian website. So I'm trying to stay away from information that is specific to the country of Australia. But I shouldn't, right? Because This is a worldwide show. So Out of the Shadows, hashtag You Can Talk, End Youth Suicide Week. Report any media coverage that stigmatizes suicide. SANE's Stigma Watch promotes responsible reporting of suicide in the Australian media. They will respond to reports of inaccurate or inappropriate stigmatizing media portrayal of suicide. So let's flip that to the US, since that's where I'm at, right? So who do you reach out for that? Well, I mean, you can reach out to the FCC. You can reach out to, that local station and say, hey, I think that this might be a little insensitive to suicide ideology and things like that. So there's definitely ways that we can get that off the media. And I definitely think that can be taken one step further to social media as well. Because we've all seen it. We all know it's out there. Videos of people committing this horrible act. Videos that kind of glorify the idea. And obviously there's TV shows like 13 Reasons Why and things like that, but and even the music that I played here today in some way can kind of be taken a little bit negative, Letter to My Killer, Suicide. But I do that in a way to kind of just share the feelings that those people have, and that's part of me helping end the negativity around it. And I definitely think that that's important. And we're going to continue that on the brand new KZ Radio, Tuesday and Wednesday night, starting at 7 p.m. Money's Crazy Soundtrack is going to prevent screaming suicide awareness 2024 parts 2 and 3. Where again, we're going to give a lot of the information that we gave here. And we're going to let you guys hear music that tackles these subjects. Either songs about people who have lost people who have died by suicide, or songs that talk about how people feel, and then there's even songs in there that make you realize that you're not alone and all of that. So that's going to be Tuesday and Wednesday on KZ, on the new KZ Radio. Like I said, stay tuned to our social media for where you can get KZ Radio. But I've been working very hard on this, and originally this part of it, the soundtrack part of it, was originally supposed to be a month-long thing, but due to what we were dealing with KZ Radio, I decided to put it off until we got the new version launched. So this one's definitely been tough. It's always tough to recant those feelings. It's always tough to talk about a very sensitive subject, but this is breaking the stigma for me. And again, I want to share the information with everybody here. If you or someone is exhibiting any of the signs that we talked about here today on this broadcast, seek help by calling 988 in the United States. Or if you can't do the 988 short code on a mobile device, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. Again, that number is 1-800-273-8255. And to anybody out there that may be watching this show, and you just need to talk to somebody, obviously you can reach out to 988, but don't hesitate to send the Money's Crazy Mind or the KZ production pages a message. Myself, Lisa, Jess, we'll all answer those messages, and we will be there for anyone who is struggling with any kind of emotional or mental crisis, or maybe having suicidal ideology. Been a while since I did a show this long, but we're going to cut it there, everybody. Hopefully this helped a lot of people. And even if it just helped one person, then I did my damn job. And that's the way I feel about it. So until the next time, we're with you. And until Tuesday night on KZ Radio, this is Lee. Too hot to handle, too cold to hold. You call the Ghostbusters because they in control, and they're right there. Money saying, take care of yourself and each other. Enjoy Thanksgiving, everybody. Until we meet again.
Money's Crazy Mind is proud to be the exclusive flagship broadcast of Nameless, Faceless Productions.
That's all, folks.